The Chinese Communist Party has grown land and resources for past decades. Millions of Tibetans displaced. Tibetan children have been forcibly removed from their home and placed in boarding schools.
Limite nachepi tone keran cheche zambli dinane anjambur mche rayu ne beche anzenjola haberame to be duje kada sobe sobe nerim kali chokati chadanji Sungtuba Songsan, Tito of the Deshe, Mogoshi, Binetring, De Hondo, Peva Mabuchi, Tashinke, Mogoshi, Pep Lipala, Begineta, the Matu Sangme, Putapata, Chibi Orla, Netring de Tabonge, Keja Pomato, Tring, Chato Chimpe, Nangla. Parato Pemira Shinki, any simple lane. Sote Hama, Bobo, Tigeti, Milik Yamadela, Mudenta, any Tigeti, Chief Yaranki, Tensu Picheto, Chaval, Tang, Lunda, Tigetela, Simbabe Tone, and Trindu Chekabikaba, Pebare, and the Tenjego Gune Samala.
Next, we have with us here today Professor Anand from the University of Westminster.
Thank you so much, Tenzin, and thank you everyone. I may have missed some if I wasn't in this country. In fact, I had written to him to say that I might miss today because I was not feeling very well. And that's partly because I've been very physically tired with work, etc. But those of you who watch BBC Newsnight would also see that I've been involved in certain kind of clash with a particular minister where they tried and she tried to get us declared as something and shut us down. She has failed. So the reason I highlight this is because here I am, a professor, an academic, doing my work, being seen as a troublemaker by a particular minister who accuses us of something wrong. We challenge, she loses, and I'm on TV speaking about it, and I'm still here. And the reason I highlight this to you is because with all the flaws of democracy, that's what democracy ought to be. And that's what I wanted to start with saying, that here I am, and if it's a sky and everybody says that it's my picture vis-a-vis the minister's picture. Whether she resigns or not is on her conscience. If she has a conscience, I don't know. But I just wanted to highlight it because I'm not only a professor, I have a senior role within my university. And that's what any system ought to be, that it should allow freedom within law to people to express their view. And of course, I'm not even going to summarize or even say what Tibet faces is completely opposite of what China is. In fact, in my own work, as some of you would know, I've been talking about Chinese system as a colonial system for many years. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, there are only 2 academics related to Tibet who talk about Chinese system as a colonization for last 2 decades, even when Tibetan officials would usually not use that term. And you have both of us here today. Again, you'll hear Carol later, but 2 of us are here. Now, what I wanted to say to you is a couple of things. As an academic, there are few promises I can make to you. It's true that I have been with your movement, broadly speaking, for almost 25 years, like I've been there. Sometimes very active, sometimes not so active. But what I promise, of course, is going forward, I will be with you. That's one. And it's important for me to say it because as you grow senior in bureaucracy and university systems or any system, there's always an incentive to be quiet, be more balanced. I am very balanced. And I've learned from no one other than His Holiness the Dalai Lama. When he came to my university, University of Westminster in 2012, and I had spent some time on my own without anyone else around, what I felt was that his compassion and his lack of any sense of revenge or grievance against Chinese people was immensely humbling. I would not be able to do it. So I wanted to say that I start with him that for me this is never about Chinese people. It is about a particular system. And that system is a colonial system, that's a dehumanizing system, that's one that is completely denying freedom and humanity. So that's what I wanted to say. That's why I would work with the movement. Second. Third thing I would promise is, I would never say to Tibetan friends and Tibetan people, you must do this, which is a habit of many of us academics. As we become professors, we say, Tibetans are wrong. You Tibetans in exile don't know what's going on in Tibet. I will tell you, I have done my field work in part of Tibet for 3 days or maybe 3 months, and I know the reality more than you do. That's often a tendency amongst academics. I promise never to be condescending in saying to Tibetans what you must or must not do. Because this is your struggle, and I would say it's our, let's say not responsibility alone, but it's our fortune that you're giving us the opportunity to be with you. So this is also our struggle in terms of being someone who believes strongly in fairness, strongly in freedom, and strongly in being anti-colonial. So I wanted to promise you that because I do see amongst my own fellow people who write about China or about Tibet, sometimes this lack of humility or an emergence of an idea that you in exile and diaspora don't know what the reality back there is. I would promise you I would never do that. Now, I just wanted to end by saying that the struggle, of course, is a political struggle ultimately. It's a struggle over knowledge. And that's where I'm an ally for you. I'm in solidarity because I'm in some sense, in part of producing knowledge. I promise to keep producing knowledge, which is speaking truth to power, not only power of, in this case, Chinese system, a colonial system, but also pressure in the West to temper yourself down. And I continue to do that. And you may not realize it's not easy. You'd assume that most people in the West would acknowledge the freedom part and other parts. And every time I write something other than the usual friends and circles, the reality, I just said, Tibetans have been experiencing lack of freedom, and Hong Kongers too and Uyghurs too. That was a sentence. And a reviewer, academics will know, a reviewer said that, what is the proof? Bring nuance. I thought it's very obvious that Tibetans have no freedom, and I cited Freedom House in text. Still, I was being asked to balance. So I'm just saying this to you because these are struggles of knowledge production. In this case, I'm your ally. In terms of action, I'm not an activist, but I'll do my best to support activists wherever I can, but this is your struggle, I'm there. But third thing, which is your thing and not mine, but I hope that you continue with that, is dream. China might try to control knowledge to an extent they could, maybe they're not, and we will see, it's a battle. Actions they might try to control, but something no colonial system can ever control fully is the dreams of people. And your dream of freedom, of being not China, as it says very clearly, having control over your own, not only history, you don't have control over your present to an extent, but your future is a struggle that is of a wider humanity, and in that I will be in solidarity with you forever. Thank you so much.
Next, I would like to invite another academic and who, I'm really pleased was able to join with all of us here today, Professor Carol McGranahan.
Mình Carol McGranahan. Turing shocking Ari Colorado ne Lepayen so Tanaranga really Nikudu jet lag lagyo. So I tried to hear. So that's Locha Chamon de Colorado, the Tibetan Studies program. Petabudu. That's a gigant she and Lochutso Momodo. Ari Lochutso, we have Purba Lochutso, Mangsha, Purbaz. Rishu, Luju, Chutse, Gilagi. And I'm a scholar of resistance. I study a free Tibet, an independent Tibet. Tibet that existed before China invaded it and colonized it, and the Tibet that continues today, anywhere Tibetans are in the world, to fight against the Chinese. So some of my research includes the formation of the first Tibetan political party. That was in the 1940s by a man named Raga Pandasan. I work with Chushigandru, and sometimes, as Dipesh said, I also consider myself the luckiest person in the world to do the work that I do. I meet people who tell me their life stories, who tell me their struggles, who tell me what it means to fight, and then ask me to join them in telling those stories to the rest of the world. So in Colorado, when I stand before a room of 200, mostly Inji students, who have no idea what happened in Tibet, I take them on a journey over 3 months or 4 months in the classroom, where they learn the story of Tibet, what happened in Tibet, why, what are Tibetans doing? Why have over 160, Tibetans chosen to set themselves on fire? How does that make sense? How does that hurt? How does that create perhaps positive change as well, right? Give my students knowledge, but also the tools for action. So telling the story is something that, again, folks, scholars like Dipesh and I, have the privilege and the honor of joining with you all, with the Tibetan community, to tell the story, right? And many voices together, telling the story not just of what happened in the past, but what continues to unfold today, is part of working, right, toward the future that Sonam Tsaringla was talking to us about, right? A future where Tibet is again, right, Tibetan, right? We know that. That will be again. So as a historian, I want to talk about the importance of history. History is not just something of the government. It's not just, right, Shungiloju, but it's also people's history, like Nigiloju. And telling the history from the perspective of ordinary people. People like everyone in the room. Maybe some of you are not ordinary. All right. Those of you who, like me, feel like we are just regular, ordinary, right, everyday people. These are the people whose stories I tell. So 30 years ago, I started working with Chushigandru veterans to tell their story, to learn what had happened. The story of the fight for Tibet had only been told as a story of the CIA, right? My country, my government, not the story of Tibetan action, Tibetan initiative, Tibetans leading the way, with the CIA supporting them, not the other way around. And these men might not have been big men, but they were men of courage, men of compassion, and men of commitment. There were also some women too. However, as you may know, once the army became formally devoted to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, women were no longer allowed to fight. So in the early days, when people were just fighting from their homes, their villages, within their own payu, right, women and men both fought. Once the army on June 16th, 1958, right, was formally dedicated to the Dalai Lama, right, then women supported in other ways. What I want to say is that these are people, right, Samchampo, Lobchampo, Shuchampo, right, really a strength, but also a history that still remains somewhat unknown. Right? I have written a book, many veterans have written books. We have books now in both English and in Tibetan. We have the film Shadow of Tibet by Tenzin Sonam and Rito Seren, which is a documentary. We have a new film coming out, a feature film by Shenpen, right? That is coming soon, I believe, possibly this year even. Chushigandru is not the only history you need to know. And I know just as well as perhaps some people in this room how controversial that history can be, and how painful history can also be. And I want to say, actually echoing some of the things that Professor Anand just shared, what it means to be responsible as a scholar and to choose to commit yourself and your career, right, to the people. Means to tell stories honestly and truthfully, even when they are difficult, but especially when they are difficult. So with that in mind, I want to invite you all to a ceremony we are having this summer. This is actually the first time I'm publicly announcing it here in London. We just decided on the date this past week. So Dumra is one of the Tibetan words for garden, which many of you know. The secret CIA training camp high in the Rocky Mountains, close to our university. The CIA officers called it the ranch. The US Army calls it Camp Hale. And Chushigandru Mamiso, right, the Tibetan one, called it Dumra. So we are having a commemoration of the 66th anniversary this summer, June 9th, for anyone who would like to come to Colorado. I promise you it will be beautiful in June. And our mountains are similar to those of Tibet. You are all welcome to come to this ceremony. I want to leave you with the words of one of the veterans, someone who I spent a lot of time with. He's passed now, but he was someone very dear to me. And these are the words, actually, that I end my book, which is titled Arrested Histories, which is a history of Chushigandru. His name was Baba Lekshe. I don't know if we have any Babas in the house tonight. But one of the things Baba Lekshe said to me is that without knowledge, you can only fight for small things. And so the importance of knowing history in order to fight with power, to fight with strength, and to fight in ways that are effective is what he wanted us all, but especially the next generation and the next generation of Tibetans to hear. So in honor of him and all of his comrades, right, who fought to defend His Holiness, Pogelo, March 10th, I'm happy to be here with you in London for the first time, and thank you for inviting me to speak.
And next, we have with us here a good friend, Benedict Rogers, a co-founder of Hong Kong Watch.
I think if I was the deputy chairman of the Communist Party Human Rights Commission, something would be very wrong, or maybe something would be much better. It's a great privilege to be here today to stand in solidarity with the Tibetan community of the UK, with Tibetans around the world, and with especially Tibetans in occupied Tibet today. And it's also a privilege to follow all the previous speakers, and I really identify with and was inspired by many of the remarks that we just heard. I want to start actually with an apology. I'm sorry that I was not with you in the earlier parts of the day when you were protesting in Whitehall and then marching to the Chinese embassy and then protesting outside the Chinese embassy. And I feel rather bad that I'm speaking here with the comfort of being inside, dry and warm, and having enjoyed wonderful momos when you were marching for several hours in the pouring rain and demonstrating in the pouring rain. All I can say is that although I was not with you in person, I certainly was with you in spirit, and I hope that all of us now are dry and warm and have already or will have the opportunity to enjoy momos. But it is a privilege to stand with you on this 65th anniversary of the Tibetan national uprising. And I think there are so many things that we, who are friends of Tibet, can learn from the Tibetan struggle. But I want to highlight two things that I think we can really learn from you. I am a friend of the Tibetan cause, and I have been in solidarity with Tibet for many years. But it's fair to say that the majority of my focus as the co-founder and chief executive of Hong Kong Watch, the majority of my time is spent on Hong Kong. A large part of my time is also spent on other areas of the Chinese Communist Party's repression, the genocide of the Uyghurs, the crackdown across China itself, the threats to Taiwan. And it's only really been in the last few years that my involvement with the Tibetan cause has moved from being an in principle solidarity to a more active commitment and involvement. And I think from the perspective of somebody working on those other areas, Hong Kong, the Uyghurs, the threats to Taiwan, the crackdown across China, some of the things, especially in Hong Kong, that have only happened in the last few years, that we can learn from Tibet and from this 65th anniversary. 65 years of brutal repression, actually nearly 75 years of the invasion and occupation, is that the things we're starting to see Hong Kongers suffer, you, the Tibetans, have been suffering for 65 or 75 years. Tibet, in many ways, has been the Chinese Communist Party's laboratory for many of its tools of repression that it has then rolled out to the other areas that it represses. Tibet has been the laboratory for surveillance. It has been the laboratory for religious persecution, which we now see in fierce form against Uyghur Muslims, against Christians, against Falun Gong, and others. And in terms of the cultural, linguistic assimilation, forced assimilation that has been going on in Tibet, we see that being rolled out to these other areas, maybe in slightly different forms, but nevertheless it's happening. And so I think we have so much to learn from what the Chinese regime has been doing to your people for 65, 75 years. But the other thing that we can learn from Tibetans is your extraordinary courage, persistence, fortitude, dignity, non-violence, but determination in resisting the Chinese Communist Party's repression. If you have been doing this for 75 years, I think all of us who are involved in supporting your struggle and also supporting the other struggles that I've mentioned can really take inspiration from that extraordinary example that you and previous generations of Tibetans have shown. I had the great privilege last year of travelling to Dharamsala, and it was my first time there, and I had a wonderful visit. I met wonderful people, and most especially I had a long meeting with the Sikyong, and then a short but immensely special audience with His Holiness. Some of you may be aware that I also wrote a book. I think there are a number of people in the room who've written books, but I wrote a book called The China Nexus, published just over a year ago, which is a book that looks at all of the issues I've just highlighted, the Uyghurs, Hong Kong, the crackdown across China, but it has, of course, a chapter, a very important chapter on Tibet. And I learned so much when I was researching the chapter on Tibet. I had the privilege of interviewing a number of amazing, courageous Tibetans. And I think when Professor Anand talked about the importance of dreaming, that came through in the stories of the Tibetans that I interviewed for my book. And one of the dreams that I remember most moved me was interviewing somebody, and this story is told in the book, who, after telling me a terrible story of their suffering, their repression, of the conditions in Tibet, then said, you know, as well as wanting to see His Holiness one day go back to Tibet, as well as wanting to see a free Tibet, as well as wanting to see the repression end, my real dream is to see the Tibetan national football team play in the World Cup. Well, I'm not much of a footballer, and so I can't comment on what the standard of the Tibetan national football team is, or even if you have one. But I think that is as valid a dream to have as all the other dreams that we all have, and I hope that will become a reality. I have been pleased in the last few weeks. I think there is a real danger that in the world of so many crises now, not least Ukraine and Gaza, and even within the context of the Chinese regime, all of the struggles of the Hong Kongers and Uyghurs and others, there is a danger that Tibet's struggle, because it has been going on for so long, gets forgotten or overlooked or falls down the agenda. And that's why this commemoration today and the protest that you've had is so important. But I am pleased that in the last few weeks, Tibet has had a little bit more media attention for tragic reasons, but nevertheless it has been back in the news headlines. There was an article, I think just yesterday, on the BBC website about the colonial boarding schools. There was, of course, as Sonam Frasi has already mentioned, the terrible news of the arrest of 1,000 people in the protests against the dams. And in many ways one wouldn't want it to be in the news because one wouldn't want those things to be happening. But as they are happening, it is good that they are back in the news. So I just close by saying that as I continue my work for Hong Kong and for the Uyghurs, for others, I will promise to increase and intensify my support for Tibet as well. You know, it's very timely because, as you may know, there is a new security law going through in Hong Kong. They already have the national security law that has destroyed pretty much all of their freedoms, but now they don't think, the Hong Kong government doesn't think that's enough, and so they're imposing another security law, and that's very likely to be enacted within the next matter of days. We made a submission to the Hong Kong government's public consultation about their security law, and were then condemned for doing so, so I'm not quite sure what kind of consultation that was. In fact, we were condemned for organising a statement by 85 civil society groups from around the world. And the Hong Kong Secretary for Justice, Chris Tang, described us and our statement described the statement as a gangster tactic. I'm not quite sure the last time gangsters produced a carefully worded, legally analysed statement signed by 85 of the world's most significant international human rights organisations, but there you are. So I want to say thank you for having a gangster in your midst. I've also, in the trial of Jimmy Lai in Hong Kong, been named multiple times now by the prosecution as a collaborator with Jimmy Lai. So thank you for having a collaborator in your midst. And most of all, I want to be a collaborator not just with Jimmy Lai, not just with the people of Hong Kong, but with you, the Tibetan people. And the last thing I will quickly say, picking up on something that was said earlier, the Chinese Communist Party and the Hong Kong government describes people like me and all of us in this room as anti-China. In fact, just the other day, the Hong Kong government described Hong Kong Watch as an anti-China organisation. But I want to say, as I always do, that that is completely wrong. I'm not anti-China, I'm certainly not anti the people of China. In fact, I'm pro the people of China, and that's why I speak out for human rights for anyone who is suffering under the Chinese Communist Party regime. It is the Chinese Communist Party regime that I oppose, it is human rights that I support, and it's the human rights of the people of Tibet, as well as all the other areas that I will continue to fight for. So I stand with Tibet. The words on my t-shirt, Free Tibet, are not only words on a t-shirt, they are words engraved in my heart. And I will keep working for Tibet until Tibet and all its people are free. Thank you.
Thank you, Kungala. We have 3 patriotic songs today. The first song will be sung by Dashila from Bristol. The song Black Hat, Shamunapo, is by a singer in Tibet called Lundukdakpa. He was arrested in 2019 for 6 years for a song that simply criticized Chinese policies. He has not been seen or traced since. Please can I invite Dashila to sing Black Hat.
제당에 이렇게 멋이 말에 다 치대 미신당이 소주로 다 치대는 것도 이해한다. 조회되는 당 걸와. 근데 담대기 시에지네 산다.
Yes, well, we have to wait about an hour and a half before it will stop, hanging around.
Nigeria, in Naming Ashi, which was it.
Touch the Samalo, and Tari Devi Makushu Pesha, Matsupe Masakawajo. We are very pleased to see that there are a lot of Tibetans and our supporters who have gathered here to participate in this very important, significant 65th Tibetan Uprising Day. And thank you very much for all of you for being here and supporting our causes. And we are a small family from Bristol, and we always come here in solidarity with our Tibetan people suffering inside Tibet. So we are going to present a small song which is called as Yul Kerve Michu, the tears of separation from our homeland, and we hope that you will enjoy it. Chile, lo che io ci ne io che ta mo chu sha
ya ya amala ni kon sa chu ni go go du ne thö ki da bom thap se la chu kyap ko
so
Yeah. Tibetan diaspora, pain and tears of separation, of leaving home behind. The silent tears of my father, the pain and sadness that I've seen, unable to see their families for many years due to Chinese occupation is brutal. We shall never give up and will continue to fight for free Tibet. Tibet will never die. Per Yalom. Thank you.